Dear Tattooed Biker, I think a dogman was stalking me once a long time ago when I was hunting wild hogs in the swamps of eastern North Carolina. I was about 20 or 21 and loved exploring the swamps where I lived and got into hunting wild hogs because, well, it was a pretty big adrenaline rush. They could be pretty aggressive here. I had gone into the swamp about 10 miles from my house where the trails were on dry land, through a marshy area, and it was heavily wooded. I heard something close by, and I stopped to look and listen, and I could hear something breathing really deeply, and then a low growl after it stopped. This happened a few more times, so I changed direction to try and get behind it and pin it between myself and the water, but it changed direction on me. After about an hour of creeping around, I realized it was between me and the way out of the swamp. At that point, I was starting to get scared, because I don't think it's a hog anymore. I made the decision to get out of there by wading through the swamp water up to my chest. I think maybe it tried to follow me, but didn't like the water. I eventually made it out to my truck, and a few days later I told my buddy's cousin about it, and all the bones and weird stuff I'd seen out there. And he completely changed when I told him where I was, and he said to stay away from there. When I asked him why, he refused to say any more. Fast forward a few years, and I'm at his house where all his family was, and his uncle came and talked to me and said, "I heard you were out in the swamp hunting hogs. You're really lucky that you made it back." When I asked why, he said, "That's where the big dogs live." When I asked him what he meant, he wouldn't say any more. I hunted for a few more years, but never in that same spot, and I eventually started working a different job and got into some other hobbies, and also started playing in a band, so I didn't really have time for it. I'd completely forgotten about that day until a few years ago, when I saw a story about dogmen on YouTube, and I immediately remembered that one hunting trip. I've since heard a lot of different stories similar to mine, and I've also heard dogman encounters around and down the coast near where I live. So I stay out of the swamp now, and I don't go in any further than I have to if I ever have to. Thanks for reading. Signed, James. Dear TB, I was a guide in the East Kunite Mountains in British Columbia, Canada, and there was one night that I just can't explain. I was dropped off to cut a horse trail, which is basically just a trail for horses to come through. Right off the bat, everything went calm and everything was silent. That's when I started hearing these weird wood knocks, banging and whoops in between. My job was to take a chainsaw and cut that trail. But it got so creepy that I didn't want to turn off my chainsaw, because when I did, the silence was just too eerie. But eventually I did turn it off, because, well, I only had a certain amount of fuel. So I sat down on a log, and I was about to have some lunch. As I was sitting there, a lodgepole pine tree came flying at me. Now, it wasn't directly in my line, but it landed 3 to 5 meters away from me. Now, I'm talking the whole tree, roots and all, as if it had been pulled up straight from the ground. Keep in mind, I didn't have a gun with me, but I did have my chainsaw. I was scared to look behind me, so I just sat there, thinking that I'd been hearing strange sounds all afternoon. I stood up and started my chainsaw back up to make some noise, and as I continued to the end of the trail where it's supposed to be, a hunting cabin, where I was spending the night, I noticed that the second chainsaw wasn't running. The knocking, whooping, and banging were happening off in the distance. Throughout the night, the rocks were hitting the roof. Not constantly, but just enough to keep a person awake. It was a terrifying night, and at one point, I even considered cranking up the chainsaw inside the cabin just to make some noise. But carbon monoxide poisoning is a real thing. Now to this day, I'm still not sure how much I slept that night. But I walk out the next day, and I could see that rocks were all over the cabin, which was weird because we're in a wooded forest with dirt ground. There wasn't a lot of stone just lying around. The next time our crew ended up going to that hunting cabin again, it was shut down due to severe damage to the cabin, as if it had been trashed inside and out. This was very odd, and deep down I still suspect it was a Sasquatch. I do believe they exist. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Albert. Hey, Tattooed. Now, I'd never heard of the dogman or the Bray Road beast until about a year ago. My fiancé told me about this because I saw that creepy monster behind my wide open pasture. There's no stumps or trees, no dirt piles or anything else that it could stand on. It was just towering, 3 to feet taller than my 54-inch, give or take, tall horse fence. I could see the glowing eyes when I flashed my headlamp in its direction, and I could make out a human-like figure as it followed me to the north, separated by an electric fence. There, with my firearm drawn, aimed, and unlocked, I didn't have a need to hurt it, so I just gave it space and privacy as I retreated, undoubtedly fearful, intimidated, and confused, although maybe full of wonder, as I was still questioning what on earth I was looking at. Now, I'm not saying that this thing is the answer, but I won't rule it out just yet. Has anyone else in northern Illinois reported seeing this? Can you please reply with any similar sightings anywhere close to here? Elkhorn, Wisconsin is the closest place that has numerous reports, which is less than 35 to 40 miles from here. Thanks. Signed, Jesse. Hi, TB. I'm from the Jones Chapel area in Cullman, Alabama. While growing up, my family and our neighbors swore that there was a creature that they called the Black Thing, a man-like human creature, covered in hair with extremely long arms. It would whistle and approach my mom and her siblings. Now, I've seen pictures of its footprints, and I've heard something howl loudly when I was a kid. My dad and a few other people who married into our family swear they've also seen it. Some of them have divorced my family members, including my dad and my mom. And they all still insist that this thing exists, so it's not just some family joke that the older people play on the kids. I mean, why would you continue telling a lie as part of a family legend when you're no longer a part of the family? Well, I'm 36 now, and even one of my uncles on my dad's side said he saw it when he was with my dad one day. I'm at the age now where I could be told the truth if it were just some joke played on by my younger cousins. Now, different people have told the same story, and they've always got all the details right. Like a camping trip where it appeared, or a day spent working in the garden when it tried to snatch up one of my aunts as a child. One story even involves a sleepover, where my mom and her friends heard something at the window, scratching and whistling. They thought it was just my uncle playing a joke, but he came into the room when everyone started screaming, as my mother tells it. They think that it learned to whistle because my grandpa was always whistling around his farm, trying to lure one of my aunts or uncles away. They say that it smells really bad, and this seems to be a detail that everyone always mentions when they talk about it. It was really terrifying as a kid just to hear about this thing. People have come from all over the country to try and hunt it, and have found footprints and long, coarse hair on trails and fences. I just thought I would share. Signed, Zeke. Hey, Tattooed Biker. Since the beginning of the pandemic up till now, I've been working as a travel paramedic across the country. I've worked everywhere from New York City to LA, even Native American reservations in South Dakota. During my travels, I'll tell you, I've seen some eerie things and I've had some strange encounters. A lot of the really high strangeness has occurred in Pennsylvania, of all places. Now, PA was one of my first travel jobs during the pandemic. Typically, I was in a new city, in a new hotel every week. And I've been all over that state, typically driving 100 to 300 miles a day through winding mountain roads. Let me tell you, Pennsylvania can be a very strange place at night, especially with the lack of street lighting on many roads. On one particular occasion, while driving down a back road through central PA, a giant dog hopped the guardrail and ran out in front of my truck. It looked like a husky or a coyote, but much, much bigger than any dog or coyote ever should be. Even on all fours, its head was at the hood of my truck. It's a 2020 Dodge 2500. The hood of the truck is almost 6 feet up from the ground. This thing made prolonged eye contact with me, with sharp, piercing yellow eyes as it crossed the road, and then continued up into the woods. Flash forward a few months and I'm in the Philadelphia area. Now, the area that my hotel occupied is newly developed, so the parking lot of the hotel is very well lit, but the surrounding area is wooded and dark. I often lay awake until early morning hours and keep my blinds open. Well, the other night I was looking out the window, and I saw this odd white shape out in the parking lot. It was absolutely featureless from what I could tell, almost like a blob with thick, short legs. I was so shocked that I did a double take, and then it was gone. Then, just a few nights later, I was lying in my bed watching TV, window open, blinds up, and I heard this odd noise. Now, the only way I can describe it is that it sounded like a baby's cry, but very muffled and raspy, and it sounded like it was being carried away, like a strong gust of wind was blowing it out of earshot. I heard it maybe 3 times, but never saw anything out of my window. But I've never heard a sound like that. I thought maybe it was a fox or some other kind of animal, but it was just way too close to human, but just not human enough to be written off as such. Could this have possibly been a crawler? Thanks for reading. Signed, Anonymous. And there it is. All the true reports of strange encounters and sightings that I have for you tonight. So what'd you think about these? As always, I'm anxious to read your thoughts and theories down in the comments below, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have an unexplained encounter that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description and, well, your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for taking this weird ride with me tonight. I really appreciate you. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and well, I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.